A girl in a wheelchair was suddenly pushed to the ground in front of everyone. Most students froze, but one boy refused to stay quiet. What happened next shook the entire school to its core. It took less than 3 seconds. Emily Johnson was halfway down the east hallway of Eastmont Middle School. Her fingers rested lightly on the joystick of her powered wheelchair. She had science next period in room 213 on the top floor, and was already running late because her homeroom teacher had detained her for check-in. She always disliked those check-ins since people seemed to think her quietness meant something was wrong. She focused on the tile pattern ahead, tuning out the shuffle of backpacks and sneakers around her. Suddenly, a shoulder struck hers hard without warning. Her chair tipped, and she gasped. Before she could react, she had fallen to the floor. The sound of the impact was soft, but enough to stop a dozen students mid-step. Emily's backpack slid forward, and her spiral notebook flew open, pages fluttering down the hallway like autumn leaves. Someone gasped. A few laughed. Then the silence was broken by a sharp voice saying, "Yo, what the hell, Tyler?" One kid muttered. Tyler Green just smirked as he stood over Emily, as if he had knocked over a soda can instead of a person. He was tall for 8th grade, wearing a gray hoodie that read, "Still winning," with the kind of expression kids like him wore. A look that said nothing could touch him. His friends behind him looked uneasy, but stayed still. They hadn't noticed her yet. Tyler spoke casually without even looking down. "Move faster next time." Emily Johnson remained silent. She lay on her side, one wheel of her chair still turning, her arm twisted beneath her. Her voice was stuck deep in her throat. Someone began recording nearby. Her lips parted, perhaps to cry or maybe to scream. Yet nothing escaped them. From the hallway near the lockers, someone else stepped forward. Michael Dawson, the quiet 7th grader who usually sat at the back in history class, never chosen for kickball. People said he was intelligent, but offered little else. He walked swiftly and low, as if avoiding notice. Now he advanced, his backpack slipping from one shoulder. He did not shout or threaten. Instead, he fixed his gaze on Tyler. "You pushed her," Michael said calmly, his voice steady and unshaken. Tyler scoffed. "It was an accident." Michael did not flinch. "You looked at her first before you did it." Tyler's smirk dimmed slightly. "What are you, her babysitter now?" Michael glanced down at Emily still on the ground, struggling to lift herself up, her lip quivering, her voice still trapped. "No," Michael replied. "I just know right from wrong." Someone whispered, "Oh." Phones were definitely out now. Tyler's eyes scanned the crowd and landed on 2 students filming near the lockers. The crowd was growing. Then Tyler raised his voice. "Why don't you mind your own damn business?" But Michael answered calmly and firmly, "She is my business now." Tyler stepped forward like he was about to strike. Michael stood his ground, unwavering, eyes unblinking. He casually dropped his backpack and closed the distance between them, just 2 feet apart. No teacher had shown up yet. The bell had already rung, and the hallway was meant to be empty, but instead, it was crowded. Emily Johnson was halfway to standing now. A girl she didn't recognize was helping her up. Her chair had tipped over to the side but wasn't broken. Her backpack stayed open, revealing a science book torn right down the middle. "I'm okay," Emily murmured quietly, her voice barely audible, but Tyler ignored her. "Are you going to hit me now?" he sneered at Michael Dawson. "Come on, let's see," he challenged. Michael clenched his fists, but didn't raise them. His eyes shifted briefly to Emily, then back to Tyler. "I don't need to hit you," Michael said steadily. "You already showed everyone who you really are." That line landed heavier than any punch. Even the kids who had been smirking earlier now looked down at their shoes. Someone whispered, "Damn." But Tyler was far from finished. Humiliated, he did what people like him always do when the spotlight shines too brightly. He shoved Michael, but this time Michael didn't flinch. Michael didn't take a single step back. He absorbed the shove like an immovable wall and stared Tyler down, his fists still by his sides. The atmosphere in the hallway changed, not in some dramatic movie fashion, but with a sharp and unsettling edge. Nobody knew how to react. No one expected this quiet kid to stand his ground so firmly. Tyler's chest swelled, probably hoping Michael would throw a punch so he could justify himself. Tyler stepped forward again, but this time Michael raised one hand, not to fight, but to stop him. "Don't touch me again," he said quietly. "We both know who you chose to mess with. Try someone your own size." The words hit hard. Tyler glanced around once more, but the eyes watching no longer showed amusement or surprise. They were simply waiting. Emily Johnson's wheelchair had been straightened by a student from her art class. She was back in it now, trembling. Her arms were crossed tightly over her chest. Her hair had escaped from its clip, and she hadn't looked up yet. "Michael Dawson," she whispered, but he didn't catch it. "Y'all act like he's some kind of hero," Tyler snapped suddenly. "She fell, so what, you pushed her?" Another voice said it was Amber Sullivan's 8th grade yearbook. Blonde hair in a ponytail with braces, she held up her phone recording without a blink. Everyone saw it. Tyler faced her and said, "Put your phone away." "No," she answered. The hallway fell silent once again, but this time it belonged to Michael. "I'm not your enemy, Tyler," he said calmly. "But you just made yourself one." Then Michael turned his back and moved to Emily, knelt beside her, and finally looked her straight in the eye. "Are you okay?" Her wide eyes didn't waver. "I'm fine," she replied, though it lacked conviction. Michael studied her carefully. "Are you sure?" She nodded slowly, then more firmly. Behind them, Tyler muttered something, but no longer shouted. He looked like a dog that bit down too quickly and disliked the taste. His friends were retreating toward the stairs, all pretending they hadn't just seen him fail at intimidating a girl in a wheelchair and lose to someone half his size. A teacher finally appeared. Miss Carvernan came from the 7th grade math hallway. She hurried around the corner, her scarf fluttering like a cape, then stopped, observing the situation carefully. Emily Johnson was lying on the floor. Michael Dawson was crouched beside her, his phone still in hand, and Tyler Green stood nearby alone. "What is going on?" she asked. Everyone started speaking at once, jostling to be heard. "No, he did it," one insisted. "It's all recorded on video, ask Amber," another said. "Michael didn't do anything wrong," someone else added. Miss Carvernan raised her hands and said firmly, "That's enough. All of you put your phones away immediately." Slowly, the phones were lowered. One student kept recording, hiding behind his hoodie, but when she caught his gaze, he quickly stopped. Miss Carvernan approached Emily. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Emily stiffened at the nickname. She did not like being called that. She gave a small nod. "I'm fine." "Who helped you?" Michael stood up. "I did," he said. Miss Carvernan looked at him, then at Tyler Green. Before either of them could answer, Emily spoke first. "Tyler pushed me on purpose." Tyler's jaw dropped open. "That's not true," he gasped. Miss Carvernan's eyes narrowed. "We will settle this in the office," she declared. With that, she radioed for help and guided the three of them, Emily, Tyler, and Michael, down the hallway. Students parted around them as if they were important guests. Soft whispers followed them. Some kids even clapped quietly when Michael passed by, while others stayed silent, unsure whether this situation was something to cheer. Michael did not react to any of it. He simply walked next to Emily, quiet again, yet somehow different this time. It seemed the silence was no longer just his defense, but possibly a deliberate choice. In the administrative area, they were quickly separated. Emily Johnson was guided into the nurse's office for an assessment, while Michael and Tyler Green sat apart in the waiting room without exchanging glances. Michael fixed his eyes on the beige wall. Tyler busied himself with a loose thread on his sleeve. The secretary handed them each a referral slip. Yet the principal had not appeared. Despite that, the atmosphere was heavy with tension, and the real confrontation was just starting. Michael could hear the faint noise of the copy machine through the wall as he sat rigidly in the chair outside Principal Landry's office. His legs twitched slightly, and his hands rested quietly in his lap. His mother had always told him, "When you speak up, be prepared for someone to try to make you regret it." He was feeling that pressure now, not because he feared Tyler, but because of the adult's uneasy silence. Tyler sat 2 seats away, arms crossed, staring forward with an indifferent look. His leg tapped beneath his jeans, and the only time he glanced over was when the secretary left her desk. He leaned in briefly and whispered just loudly enough for Michael to hear, "You won't be a hero for long." Michael didn't respond and wasn't trying to be a hero. Tyler grinned a cruel, thin smile. "You'll see." Before Michael could reply, the office door opened and Assistant Principal Delgado appeared. "Green and Henderson, come with me." Michael rose uncertain about what awaited. Tyler shrugged and rolled his shoulders. He moved as if warming up before gym and followed into the principal's office. The silence was heavy, almost unsettling. Principal Landry sat behind his desk, his square jaw clenched, wearing his usual crisp gray suit without a single wrinkle. He appeared like someone who carefully practiced his tone before speaking. Delgado stood by the window, arms crossed. 2 empty chairs were positioned in front of the desk, and they both sat down. Landry began slowly. "This school does not take physical altercations lightly." Michael tilted his head just a bit. "Neither do I." That caused Landry to blink in surprise. "I understand. Let me make this clear. There are videos going around. I have seen some. Mr. Green, we witnessed you pushing Mr. Henderson. We also saw Miss Johnson on the ground, but I want to hear your side before taking action." Tyler leaned forward, feigning innocence. "It was an accident. I didn't see her. I was trying to get to class. People were crowding and I only barely touched her." Michael almost responded but stopped himself. Landry turned towards him. "Mr. Henderson, she was already on the floor when I arrived," Michael stated. "He pushed her, and then pushed me. Can you confirm that she was pushed on purpose?" Michael shrugged slightly. He stared firmly at her before the incident happened. "That's what I observed," Delgado finally said. "Intent is difficult to prove." Michael frowned. "It's not difficult when someone says, 'Move faster next time,' after knocking a girl in a wheelchair down." Delgado shifted uneasily. Landry looked at Tyler, who now had the wide-eyed, innocent act fully on. "Look, I did not intend it like that. Tyler said quickly. I was just frustrated. Everyone was constantly recording, and I panicked, so I pushed 2 people. Michael asked, Okay, gentleman Landry, cut it out. Enough. We are going to notify your parents, and you both will stay here until they arrive. I expect no more trouble. Michael wanted to yell, but instead nodded in agreement. They were guided to separate meeting rooms. About 15 minutes later, Michael's mother arrived. Chantel Dawson came in, still wearing her coat. Her eyes were sharp and her voice low as she asked 2 questions at the reception desk before they could even say hello. Where is my son? And has anyone spoken to the girl he defended? Michael could hear her clearly through the wall. They brought the girl in. He stood up when she entered, and she did not need to ask what had happened. She hugged him briefly, then faced Principal Landry, who had joined them. Explain to me how my son ends up in a room as if he were a suspect when he was the only one helping a disabled student. Landry attempted a polite response. We are trying to get the full story, Mrs. Dawson. She stared before adding, Let me be clear. My son is respectful, has never caused trouble, and did not raise a hand until the other student got physical. So if this is about discipline, we need to know exactly who is to blame. Landry adjusted his tie. This is about making sure everyone is safe. No, she interrupted. This is about fear that a story will go viral. Well, it already has. Michael said nothing, but something inside him felt a comforting warmth. He was not glad to be in that office, but relieved because he was not alone. He had someone supporting him. Emily Johnson sat by herself in the nurse's room, her legs shaking beneath the blanket they had given her. She was not cold. She was furious that no one had asked her what truly happened. Not the nurse, not the security guard who glanced in, and definitely not Principal Landry, who had only briefly appeared to say, We will talk soon, Emily. She wanted to scream it was not an accident, but her throat tightened as it always did when she was caught off guard. The nurse offered her some crackers. At first she refused, then accepted just to make the nurse stop asking questions. Emily heard loud voices in the hallway, a woman's voice, sharp and firm, refusing to back down. Then silence fell again. 30 minutes later, her mother Angela Ellis arrived, out of breath and clearly distressed. She frowned that she had not been called earlier. Angela knelt directly in front of her daughter and looked straight into her eyes. Are you hurt? She asked. No, just my arm a little, Emily murmured. Angela gently squeezed her daughter's elbow. They said you were pushed out of your chair. Are you sure you are okay? Emily hesitated before whispering, He did it on purpose. Angela jumped to her feet. Okay. Where is the principal? The nurse tried to explain. We are still gathering information. Angela interrupted. I do not need bits and pieces. I want the whole truth right now. 10 minutes later, they were sitting in Principal Landry's office. This time Emily was seated on the soft chair while Angela remained standing. She told me it was no accident. Angela spoke with a steady tone. Landry kept his voice composed and said, I understand she feels that way, but several students have given conflicting accounts. Let me guess, Angela responded. The one standing with the boy who pushed her? Landry hesitated and then said, We are reviewing footage from various angles. You mean the one currently spreading on Snapchat? He did not respond. Emily looked down at her lap, her hands clenched tightly until her knuckles turned white. She felt as if she was fading away once again, even surrounded by adults. Angela observed. My daughter is 13. She uses a wheelchair and was shoved to the floor in a crowded hallway, and no one from this school has asked how she felt about it, until now. Landry gave a slight nod and admitted, "That is fair, but we are also worried about escalation." Another student tried to get involved, but Angela raised her hand saying, "Do not try to portray the boy who helped her as part of the problem." Landry checked his watch and explained, "Mrs. Johnson, we are not assigning blame. We want to avoid further conflict." Angela replied firmly, "Then perhaps start by holding the right boy responsible." Silence stretched for a moment until Emily finally looked up and said, "Michael did not touch him, not until Tyler pushed him too." Angela nodded approvingly. "There you have it. That is what you needed to hear." However, Landry did not take any notes. Instead, he leaned back, clearly preparing what to say next. "We will have to follow district policy. There might be temporary suspensions for both boys until we finish our investigation," Emily Johnson said with a blink. "He is being disciplined for assisting me." Angela's jaw tightened. "You want to suspend the boy who stopped it just while the inquiry is ongoing," Landry replied. Angela chuckled, but it was far from amusing, completely unbelievable. Michael and his mother were still in the adjacent office, unaware of the conversation taking place here. Suddenly, Emily felt a sharp pain in her stomach. Not physical, but the sensation that something terrible was unfolding slowly, and she was powerless to intervene. Angela stood up firmly. "We will not let this slide. I am calling the school board." Landry made no attempt to stop her as they exited. Emily looked through the main office window and saw Michael sitting next to his mother. He glanced up and met her eyes. She silently mouthed the words, "Thank you," and he gave a single nod in response. But the silence that followed spoke volumes. Because even when the truth is clear, schools do not always make the right decisions. Michael's mother, Chantel, sat rigidly in a plastic chair opposite Assistant Principal Delgado, her arms crossed and voice calm but resolute. "So, let me understand this correctly," she said. "My son defended a girl in a wheelchair. He did not hit anyone or use foul language. He helped her. And now you are thinking about suspending him?" Delgado tapped a pen against a notebook. "This is not about punishment, but about managing escalation. Whenever there is a physical situation, we must follow protocol for everyone involved." Michael remained seated by his mother throughout the exchange. He remained silent, but his thoughts were racing. He knew he had done nothing wrong. Yet there they were, speaking as if he was the one at fault. Chantel leaned forward, her gaze fixed on Delgado. "Your protocol is flawed," she said firmly. Across the hall, Tyler Green and his father had been led into a separate room. Mr. Green had already started raising his voice, which could be heard through the thin office walls. "You're just trying to blame my son because of those damn videos. I saw him. He barely touched her. And that other kid causing trouble, you should have kicked him out." Delgado briefly glanced toward the commotion. "We are trying to handle this carefully on both sides," Delgado replied. "Don't lump us together," Chantel shot back. "My son is not shouting in the corridor." Michael finally spoke up. "Why does it seem that doing the right thing only gets you into trouble?" Delgado hesitated before responding. "Sometimes doing what is right leads to complicated situations. That does not mean you have done something wrong." "But I am still going to be suspended," Michael said. We have not reached a decision on that yet, Chantel said, taking a breath and glancing at her son before turning back to Delgado. You have seen the footage and heard the testimonies. If you decide to punish Michael for intervening, we will be contacting legal counsel and the media. Delgado blinked. That will not be necessary. We'll see, she said. At that moment, Emily Johnson and her mother walked past the window. Chantel stood and opened the door for them. Angela Ellis entered without hesitation. I overheard what is going on here. You are suspending the boy who stood up for my daughter. Emily Johnson rubbed his forehead once more. No decisions have been made yet. Emily positioned herself slightly behind her mother. She glanced at Michael Dawson and gave a faint smile. He did nothing wrong. Angela pointed to her daughter. She fell. He helped the other student who shoved both of them. So could you clarify what exactly is being reviewed? Just then, Principal Landry entered the room, his voice calm, though his collar was a bit loosened. The tension was becoming obvious. We are trying to prevent things from escalating by keeping the students apart for several days while we collect further accounts, he explained. So you are suspending Michael Green? Chantel asked again. No, explained Landry. We are recommending a voluntary period at home. It is not an official suspension. That amounts to the same thing, Michael said quietly. Angela crossed her arms. If you want to prevent things from getting worse, then perhaps focus on the boy who started all of this, not the one who stopped it. Landry sighed before nodding toward Emily. We will require some time. There will be a review panel tomorrow morning. Parents are invited to join, and no permanent decision will be made until then. Both Michael and Emily sensed it. The atmosphere in the room tightened. They felt they were being controlled, not listened to. Chantel looked at her son. We are attending that meeting, Angela affirmed. The two mothers exchanged a brief glance, one filled with understanding, maybe even respect. Michael finally let out a breath. Angela turned to him quietly and said, "Thank you for helping my daughter." He gave a slight nod in response. I couldn't just stay silent. Chantel gazed at her son as if seeing him fully for the first time. Not only as her child, but as someone stepping into a role much larger than himself. Meanwhile, outside the office, the school was far from done dividing opinions. By lunchtime the following day, Eastman Middle resembled a shaken soda bottle ready to burst. The incident had evolved into something bigger. Word traveled fast, and videos from the hallway were all over social media. Snaps, stories, text chains. No one cared about the official email saying there had been an incident involving students. Kids witnessed it firsthand. They saw Emily fall to the floor. They saw Michael stand up, and they saw Tyler shove him. What they did not witness, and what fueled the whispers in the cafeteria, by the lockers, and across group chats, was how the adults handled the situation. Michael was suspended. Emily was out of school. Tyler was back in class, acting as if nothing had taken place. Michael got suspended for that? A seventh grader asked from a lunch table near the back. That is not right, another student replied sharply. No, it's called voluntary leave. Same thing, the first responded. Amber Sullivan had her phone out again, but she wasn't just recording, she was organizing. There is going to be a walkout after second period tomorrow. We are making signs after school. Who's coming? A few kids hesitated, not because they disagreed, but because they doubted whether standing up was truly safe. Meanwhile, in Miss Braddock's history class, the atmosphere was noticeably different. She was one of the rare teachers who did not avoid the issue. After taking attendance, she pulled up a stool, sat down, and addressed her 7th grade students. Without even opening the textbook, she said, "Before we begin today, we need to discuss something." The room immediately fell silent. "I understand that what happened yesterday is on your minds," she continued. "Some of you witnessed it, some of you did not. But all of you belong to this school, so we are not going to ignore it." A girl raised her hand cautiously. "Are we allowed to talk about it?" she asked. Miss Braddock nodded with a reassuring smile. A boy sitting close to the window spoke next. "I don't get why Tyler wasn't sent home." Another student quickly added, "He always gets away with things. My cousin had him in gym last year, and he tripped another kid during dodgeball but only got a warning." Then a third chimed in. "He called Michael a name right after it happened, right in front of everyone." Miss Braddock leaned forward and asked, quietly, "How did that make you feel?" For a moment there was silence. Then a soft voice broke through, saying, "It feels like the school decides who it wants to protect." All eyes turned to Emily Johnson. She had returned to school that morning without any announcement. Just walked into class like any other day, but that day was different. This was the first time she spoke up. "Michael did not deserve any punishment," she said calmly. "He did nothing wrong. He helped me. And now he is home. And I have to see Tyler acting like nothing happened." Her voice caught slightly, but she did not let it stop her. "I believed that staying silent would lead to fairness, but that was not the case." The class remained tense. Miss Braddock did not rush to break the quiet. After a moment, she said something simple. "Thank you, Emily. That took courage." Amber raised her hand and asked if she could speak. "Yes," was the reply. "Tomorrow after the second period, we are walking out. Not just for Michael, but for every student who has ever been blamed for doing what was right. Anyone who wants to join will meet at the flagpole." Miss Braddock did not interrupt or threaten detention. She simply nodded once. "Be considerate and stay safe." The class did not cheer because this was not a time for noise. It was a moment filled with significance. As the bell rang and students began to pack up, Emily moved slowly, several peers walking beside her, not out of pity, but solidarity. She did not smile, not yet, but she also no longer felt invisible. Despite the strengthened support among students, the adults in charge continued to hide behind their rules. By 9 o'clock the next morning, the flagpole at Eastmont Middle had never seen such a crowd. Dozens of students stood outside with their arms crossed, holding signs held high, jackets zipped tightly against the cold wind. Some signs demanded justice for Michael, others boldly displayed Emily's name, underlined for emphasis. One simply read, "Do better, Eastmont." Inside the school, the phones rang non-stop. Parents, reporters, district officials all calling. Teachers peeked out from classrooms as the front office scrambled to respond. In a small conference room near the principal's office, the tension was palpable, an unspoken urgency filling the air. Michael sat beside his mother wearing his finest polo shirt and spotless sneakers. He did not feel courageous, but rather exhausted. The meeting had not yet begun when Chantel Deshawn was already on the defensive. Her voice was calm, but did not need to be loud, because her mere presence conveyed more than words. She stated, "You brought us here to discuss consequences, yet what is truly necessary to address is responsibility." Principal Landry, sitting opposite her, appeared more fatigued than usual. His suit jacket remained on, but his tie was loosened. Next to him was a school board representative named Miss Jillian Price, who was jotting notes in her notebook. Our purpose is to guarantee student safety, Miss Price declared without elaboration. Michael leaned closer and questioned. Then why is the individual who began this still roaming free as if innocent? Miss Price hesitated. There are restrictions due to privacy. We cannot reveal punishments imposed on other students. Chantel responded sarcastically, how convenient. The door opened once more as Angela Ellis entered accompanied by Jasmine. Jasmine wore a gray sweatshirt with fingerless gloves, her hands tightly gripping the chair's arms. Landry rose and spoke. Miss Ellis, your presence was unforeseen. Angela replied, well, here we are. My daughter has something to say. Miss Price seemed uncertain. We did not anticipate any public comments. Angela interrupted. This is not a public comment. This is a student sharing her experience. All eyes turned to Jasmine, who took a deep breath. Michael stood up for me. He did not shout, he did not shove, and he did not use any curse words. He simply spoke the truth. Yet now he is being treated as if he committed an offense. Emily Johnson's voice remained steady this time. If this is the kind of lesson we are teaching here, then we are all in deep trouble, she said firmly. No one interrupted her. Then she looked at Principal Landry. If he receives a suspension, I will not return to this school. Landry blinked. Emily, I am serious. If Eastman calls this fairness, then this is no longer a place where I feel safe. Angela put her hand gently on her daughter's shoulder. And you are not the only parent feeling this way. A heavy silence filled the room. Miss Price jotted down some notes quietly. Landry seemed about to add something but held back. Michael Dawson looked down at his hands, which were clammy. He wished he could vanish, but at the same time, he wanted to stay and declare that this whole system was flawed. Instead, Chantel stood up on his behalf. We are not demanding special privileges, she said. We are advocating for justice and common decency. My son stood up for someone in need. If the school punishes him for that, it hasn't just failed him. It has failed every one of us. The room absorbed her words. After a moment, Miss Price spoke again. We will be reassessing the decision by this afternoon. Thank you all for coming. Her tone suggested the meeting was concluded. Angela reached for her purse. Emily turned her chair toward the exit. Chantel gave a single nod and led Michael out into the hall. They passed a line of windows where students gathered by the flagpole, still standing quietly outside. Michael paused as a seventh grader named Nico spotted him and raised a fist high above his head. One by one, others followed his lead. Michael did not raise his hand. Instead, he pressed his palm against the glass. For a moment, there were no words, only that silent gesture. Then he turned away. However, decisions made behind closed doors never truly remain hidden forever. By the end of the week, Michael was back in the classroom with no formal announcement or email notification. His name simply reappeared on the attendance sheet as if nothing had ever occurred. Yet, everyone was aware they had all seen the videos, heard the whispers, and witnessed the walkout. Tyler was absent that day at school. Rumors circulated that he had been moved to an alternative program, though the district refused to confirm anything. Of course, they cited privacy rules, but to Emily and Michael, the silence spoke volumes on its own. In Miss Braddock's history class, the desks were arranged in a circle. She had cleared the lesson plan for the day and allowed the students free space to share, without grades or pressure, just open conversation. Michael sat between Emily and a boy from gym class, who offered him a quiet nod upon arrival. the boy confessed. I didn't know what to say when it happened. I saw it and just froze. Michael gave a slight smile and replied, "It's okay. I understand." Emily spoke next. "People keep telling me I was courageous for coming back to school, but I wasn't brave. I was simply exhausted. I didn't want to let them win." Miss Braddock asked, "What do you think winning means?" Emily responded, "Making us feel small, like our voices don't matter," added a girl sitting across the circle. "But that is exactly why we walked out." Miss Braddock nodded in agreement. "That is true, and speaking up is never simple." Yet this is how change begins. Michael was uncertain about the meaning of change. Nothing appeared different. The same teachers, same walls, same lunch trays. But something deep inside felt altered. It was as if he had crossed an invisible boundary and could no longer return to being unnoticed. During lunch, Emily and Michael sat together for the very first time. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. A few other students joined them, not yet friends, but close enough to share a table. Emily gazed across and asked, "Do you ever wonder how all of this began?" Michael shrugged. "Yeah," he replied. "A shove?" She shook her head softly. "No. Before that. The fact I had to live in fear in a hallway just because someone decided I did not belong." Michael looked around as kids laughed, munched on chips, and tossed grapes like basketballs. Life carried on quickly, but not for everyone. Later that afternoon, as the halls cleared out, Michael stopped by the display case near the main office. Above it were bold blue words: respect, responsibility, courage. He stood silently for a moment, then pulled a folded piece of paper from his backpack and taped it carefully under the glass. In neat handwriting it said, "Courage is not loud. It is showing up when no one expects you to." The following morning, someone added another note below, "And refusing to sit down when silence feels easier." It was a small act, but it meant everything. At the following PTA meeting, Emily Johnson and Chantel Deshawn both spoke up. They were not demanding anyone to be dismissed nor seeking media attention. Instead, they requested genuine policy reforms. These included conflict resolution training for the staff, a transparent review of disciplinary processes, and safeguards to protect students who voice concerns from being penalized for fulfilling responsibilities that adults should handle. The atmosphere was tense, yet this time, no one avoided eye contact. In the weeks afterward, things did not instantly become flawless. Issues remained, hushed conversations persisted, and some teachers still struggled to find the right words. However, Michael Dawson was no longer isolated in the hallway. Emily Johnson was no longer alone either, and that made all the difference. Change often begins with a single moment, a choice to resist, a voice declaring enough is enough. Neither Michael nor Emily turned into heroes or symbols. They became what countless children wish to become: heard. That is precisely where genuine transformation takes root. If this story stirred your emotions, share it, discuss it, and remember that even the smallest gestures of bravery can shake a system designed to silence people. Subscribe for more authentic stories that challenge, expose, and remind us of our true nature.